One of the most requested videos on my channel has been how I edit my videos. So today I'm finally showing you how they're made. Before we jump in, a quick disclaimer, I have a team of editors who help edit my videos, so a lot of the credit goes to them. What I'm showing you today is a simplified version of the process we use behind the scenes. Instead of diving into every advanced edit, I want to show you the core techniques in the simplest way possible so you can start using them in your own videos. So let's start with the tools I use. For filming, I use a DJI Osmo Pocket 3 along with a microphone that came with their creator combo. I also use a very simple lighting setup. I have two LED lights that I bought from Amazon for around $50. They sit on tripod stands, they're dimmable, and they get the job done. I edit on a 16-inch MacBook Pro, and I keep all of my video projects on a Samsung T7 SSD, which is basically just an external drive. Now when it comes to the software side of things, Canva is probably the most important one because almost all of the graphics you see on my videos are actually created there. And since many of my videos are tutorials, I rely heavily on screen recordings, and I use an app called Screen Studio for that. For editing, my team uses 3 different softwares. One uses Final Cut Pro, while the other uses Adobe Premiere Pro and After Effects. Personally, when I used to edit my own videos, I did everything in Final Cut Pro. It's the editing software I'm most familiar with, and it's also the one I usually recommend to beginners because I find it much easier to learn and navigate. Plus, you can get a 30-day free trial through Apple Creator Studio. So for this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to recreate some of my editing techniques using Final Cut Pro. Speaking of tools, I have one more resource that can make creating YouTube content a whole lot easier. Hubspot has put together 125 free YouTube templates to help you create the perfect YouTube channel. Yes, you heard that right. 125 templates, and they're all completely free. If you're watching this video, chances are you're trying to create better content for your channel. These templates give you a solid starting point so you're not staring at a blank page trying to figure everything out from scratch. They've included a YouTube roadmap planning document with 4 weeks of content planning you can fill in yourself. If you need help writing your YouTube descriptions, there are 7 ready-made templates for different types of videos that you can literally copy, paste, and customize with your own information. They've also included 25 YouTube banner templates that you can fully customize for your brand. And my favorite part of the bundle has to be the 100 YouTube thumbnail templates. You know, creating thumbnails was honestly one of the things I struggled with the most when I was starting my YouTube channel, so having 100 professionally designed templates as a starting point would have saved me a lot of time and guesswork back then. As a fellow creator, anything that saves me time is a win in my books. So if that sounds good to you, you can download the entire bundle for free using the link in my description box. This resource was created by Hubspot, who's also sponsoring today's video, so a big thank you to them. Now I want to share a few editing rules that guide every video on this channel. Rule number 1. The hook is everything. We spend the most time editing the first 15 to 30 seconds of a video because that's where you either earn someone's attention or lose it. This is where we'll add the most graphics and movement because our goal is to make viewers curious enough to keep watching. Rule number 2, something should happen every 5 seconds. This is a principle I learned from another YouTuber, and it's something I tell my editors all the time. There needs to be something happening in my videos every 5 seconds. I know that sounds like overkill, but if the screen stays exactly the same for too long, people naturally start to lose attention. Now, it doesn't have to be a complicated effect. It could be a zoom, a graphic, text on screen, a transition, or some B-roll. The goal is simply to create enough visual change to keep the video engaging. Rule number 3, show it. Don't just say it. Whenever possible, I try to explain things visually instead of just talking about them. For example, if I'm explaining a concept and I can show it through a graphic, chart, screenshot, or animation, I'll do that. Not only does it make the information easier to understand, but it also creates a much more engaging viewing experience. Now let's talk about the real secret behind my videos, and it's probably not what you think. Most people assume the magic happens inside Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro, but honestly, the secret sauce behind my videos is Canva. That's because this is where I create most of the visuals you see throughout my videos. You see, for every single video I create, I design pages and pages of graphics and visual assets in Canva before sending them to my editors to be incorporated into the final edit. And now that I'm hearing myself say that out loud, I sound like an absolute crazy person, but hear me out. Creating engaging videos takes work. There's really no shortcut around that. There isn't a secret effect, a magic transition, or hidden editing trick that's going to give you amazing videos with 0 effort. So if you're looking for a shortcut, I'm sorry to disappoint you. We're going to have to do some actual work today. You got this. Let's talk about visual identity. Personally, I want my videos to be instantly recognizable. If somebody comes across one of my videos, I want them to know it's mine before they even see my channel name. That's why a lot of the design choices I make are very intentional. For example, I mainly use a small handful of fonts throughout my videos. Bootsy is my primary font. FF Providence Sans is what I use when I want something a little more playful and handwritten. And every now and then I'll use Edwardian script when I want to add an elegant script style accent. For body text or longer explanations, I usually use Pop-ins or Code Pro because it's clean, easy to read, and works well when there's more text on screen. I also try to keep my colors very consistent. For most of my text, I mainly use white and yellow. For my graphics, I like to stick to a neutral color palette, mainly shades of beige and brown whenever possible. The other thing is that I try to make my editing style reinforce the type of content I create. Since most of my content revolves around digital products, online business, and making money online, a lot of my graphics are inspired by things you would normally see on a phone or computer. So I'll often use things like airdrop screens, photo booth frames, Mac desktop screens, and other computer-inspired elements. You can find most of these graphics directly in Canva. If you go to templates and search for terms like interface, iPhone UI, or aesthetic lifestyle, you'll find a lot of the elements I use in my videos. Most of the time, I'll simply find a template I like and copy the specific graphic that I want to use and then customize it to fit my video. And if I can't find what I'm looking for in Canva, I'll create it myself. For example, the photo booth frame that I use in my videos is actually just a screenshot from my own MacBook. I took a screenshot of the interface, uploaded it into Canva, and then replaced the image with my own footage. Sometimes you just have to get a little creative. Alright, enough talking about theory, let's actually make something. Now, I can't show you every single effect we use because we'd probably be here for the next 10 hours, but I do want to walk you through a few of my favorites that show up again and again throughout my videos. So like I mentioned earlier, all of my graphics are done inside Canva. The first thing I do is create a new design, and I choose the YouTube thumbnail size because it's the same 16:9 aspect ratio as YouTube videos. Now bear with me here because my process will sound a little crazy. What I like to do is take screenshots from different parts of my footage and upload them into Canva. The reason I do this is because it allows me to design directly on top of the footage. I can map out exactly where I want text to appear, where I want graphics to pop up, and how everything should look. For example, these are the graphics I want to appear on a particular clip from my hook. Once I'm happy with the placement of everything, I'll delete the screenshot and just keep the graphics. Sometimes I'll even change the background to black so it's easier to see what's going on. Now, because I don't want everything to appear at the same time, I'm going to separate each element into its own page. For example, the phrase "I'm talking full business concepts" is actually going to appear one word at a time. So I'll duplicate the page several times and remove elements as I go. I'll do the same thing with these other graphics. For example, I want the search bar to appear first, and then I want the text underneath to reveal one line at a time. So each of those gets its own page as well. By the end of this process, I have multiple pages that build on each other in the exact sequence I want them to appear in the video. Once that's done, I'll export everything as PNGs with a transparent background. I usually download them at the highest quality possible. Then I'll import all of those PNGs into Final Cut Pro and place them on top of my footage in the order I want them to appear. Now, I will admit that this part is a little tedious because you do have to play around with the timing. You'll need to make sure each graphic appears exactly when you want it to as you're speaking, so there's a bit of back and forth involved. I'll usually watch the footage several times and adjust the timing until everything feels right. Now, one extra thing you can do, and this is completely optional, is add a transition to some of your graphics. For example, with this search bar, instead of having it simply appear on screen, I want it to slide in from the left. To do that, I'll select the graphic, go to Transitions, and apply the slide transition. Then I'll adjust the duration to control how quickly it appears. So here's what the final result looks like. The branding, the niche, the target customer, the products you can sell. Now let's talk about the text you see throughout my videos. You'll probably notice that my text placement is a little more playful. Rather than just placing text in one straight line at the bottom of the screen, I like to spread it throughout the frame to create a more dynamic look. Because of that, I actually don't use the Add Text feature inside Final Cut Pro. Instead, I plan and design all of my text layouts inside Canva first, export it as a PNG with a transparent background, and then bring it into Final Cut Pro. This gives me a lot more control over the placement of the text without having to constantly adjust things inside the editing software. Another thing you'll notice is that most of my text is either white or yellow. Since my videos tend to have a lot of bright tones, white text can sometimes blend into the footage and become difficult to read. To fix that, I add a glow effect to almost all of my text inside Canva. You can see the difference here. Without the glow, the text can get a little lost in the background. With the glow effect, it stands out much more and becomes easier to read. Another editing technique I use all the time is removing my background so it's just me on screen. This lets me place myself on top of graphics or different layouts, which makes the video a lot more visually interesting. So I usually design the layout in Canva first. Now in Final Cut Pro, the first thing I like to do is detach the audio from the video clip. You don't technically have to do this, but I find it keeps everything organized in case I need to make edits to the footage later without accidentally affecting the audio. Next, open the effects panel and search for magnetic mask. Drag the effect onto your footage, then make sure the entire subject is selected. You'll probably have to adjust the selection a little until everything you want is highlighted in red. Once you're happy with the selection, click Analyze. You'll see the progress bar while it analyzes, and once it's finished, click Done. Now head back to Canva and download just the background from the design you created. Import that into Final Cut Pro and place it underneath your footage. Then select your footage, click Transform, and position yourself wherever you want. In my case, I'm moving myself over to the right side of the screen. From there, I simply export the text and graphics from Canva as PNGs and place them into the timeline. Now, if you don't want to remove your entire background and only want text or graphics to appear behind you, the process is slightly different. Instead of removing the background completely, duplicate your video clip first. I also recommend detaching the audio before duplicating so you don't end up with doubled audio. Then stack the duplicate directly above the original, apply the magnetic mask only to the top clip. Then place your text or graphic between the two video layers. Because the top layer only contains your mask subject, anything between the clips will appear behind you while the original footage remains in the background. Another editing style I use quite a bit is placing myself inside different frames. One of my favorites is the photo booth effect that you'll see in a lot of my videos. To create this, I first designed the frame in Canva. I simply took a screenshot of a photo booth frame on my MacBook and imported it into Canva. Then I add a rectangle over the area where I want my video to appear and fill it with a bright green color to create a green screen. Once that's done, I export the frame and bring it into Final Cut Pro. I place the frame above my video clip in the timeline. Then I go to Effects, search for green screen, and drag the effect onto the frame. As soon as it's applied, the green section becomes transparent, revealing my footage underneath. At this point, my video is usually too zoomed in, so I select the footage, click Transform, and simply resize and reposition it until it fits nicely within the frame. Another overlay I like to use is a film effect. To do this, you'll first need to find a film overlay. You can find some in Canva, but I usually get mine from Pexels. Simply search for film overlay, filter the results by videos, and download the one you like. Once you've imported the overlay into Final Cut Pro, place it above your footage in the timeline. Then, with the overlay selected, open the inspector and under blend mode, change it to multiply. That's usually the blend mode I use for this effect, but it's worth experimenting with the others since every overlay behaves a little differently. Modes like darken, color burn, or linear burn can all create different looks depending on the overlay and the footage you're working with. Another effect you've probably seen in my videos is the animated receipt printout while I'm speaking beside it. As always, I start by designing the layout in Canva. Once I'm happy with it, I remove the photo placeholder where I want my video to appear and replace it with a green background. Next, I export two separate files. First, I export the background as a regular PNG. Then I export just the receipt by itself as a PNG with a transparent background. Now let's jump into Final Cut Pro. First, import the background and place it above your footage. Then, apply the green screen effect to remove the green area so your video shows through. From there, use Transform to position yourself so you fit nicely within the layout. Next, duplicate the background layer. On the duplicated layer, crop it so only the top section of the receipt printer remains. Then place the receipt layer between these two layers. This is the trick that creates the illusion that it's actually printing out of the machine. Now select the receipt layer and use Transform to position it above the printer where you want the animation to begin. With the receipt selected, open the video inspector and add a keyframe. A keyframe is basically what lets you move an element from one place to another. Now move the red playhead to the point where you want the animation to finish. At that point, simply drag the receipt downward to its final position. You'll also notice a motion path appear on the screen, which lets you visualize the direction the receipt is traveling. Now when you play it back, the receipt smoothly slides out of the printer. One thing I also want to show you is how I create my screen recordings because they're a big part of my videos. Now, I use an app called Screen Studio. I absolutely love it because it lets me edit my recordings directly inside the app, which saves me a lot of time. One of my favorite features is the ability to add wallpapers behind the recording. There are quite a few options available, but I usually choose the iridescent category and then select the first background. That's the one you'll see in all of my videos. The built-in timeline also makes editing really easy. I can trim out unnecessary sections and speed up parts of the recording. My favorite feature though is the zoom tool. If I want to draw attention to something on the screen, I can simply add a zoom effect on the timeline and Screen Studio will automatically zoom in wherever my cursor is pointing. If I want more control, I can switch to manual mode and choose exactly which part of the screen I want to zoom into. It creates this really smooth zoom in and zoom out animation. And that's pretty much my editing process. Hopefully this gave you some ideas you can start applying to your own videos. And if you're looking for a shortcut to creating better YouTube content, don't forget to grab Hubspot's free bundle of 125 YouTube templates using the link in the description below. It's completely free and includes thumbnail templates, banner templates, content planning documents, and more. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do it. It really helps my channel. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!